Hi, and welcome back. You know, from the stack of books I've read, if there was only one I got to choose to talk about, it would be At Dawn We Slept, The Untold Story of Pearl Harbor by GordonPrang. For numerous reasons, of course you've seen from the blog that it has special interest to me and special memories. And I'd kind of like to review some of those for you again. So this is the book that I found on the bookshelf, not knowing what it held. And like I said, I opened it up and I found, tell it old-fashioned from the P.I. from the 80s type print with stories on it and updates about what was still being unearthed about the war, other pages of it, and then of course there was what was entitled The Cast of Characters. Now that is the Japanese side and the American side, which was extremely handy for me. And then of course the most precious were my father's handwritten notes about what pages he found most interesting when he was reading it. And those really did bring tears to my eyes. And then, as I mentioned, I found his review, and I found Tojo, signed by Donald, who helped make sure this book got published. And he says in here, to Joe, who lived this, I hope page 13, the last paragraph, applies. I love this last paragraph on the beginning, page 13. It actually, I think it reflects how I feel about what I've tried to do with my book too. If Gordon W. Prang were writing this introduction, he would stress that this work calls not for judgment, but for reflection, as a good book should. We hope that it also brings the reader enjoyment, as a good book should. If the story, as we tell it, raises more questions than it provides answers, then we feel it has succeeded, for such reaction is inevitable. In the poignant words of one of Admiral Kimmel's counsels, quote, Pearl Harbor never dies, and no living person has seen the end of it. End of quote. So, lovely book, remarkable. Actually, the Bible, I feel, about the attack on Pearl Harbor. 37 years of research went into this by Gordon Prang and his associates. Worth the read, worth having on your shelf, and I was one lucky person to have found it on mine. So, pick it up someday and start through it. Oh, and by the way, remember I said I was looking for pictures in the hopes that not all 850 pages was nothing but text? There are a few in the middle. He has very few pictures in here. Now I can't even find them. They've disappeared. Anyway, pick up the book and read it if you have the time, because it certainly will prove to be very, very enlightening. Now remember, this book was in the 1980s, so a lot more has been coming out since, but it's a great foundation for what we are still learning about Pearl Harbor and the planned attack. Enjoy. Thank you. Wait a minute. When I was walking away after being on camera, this fell from the book. It was a sign from the heavens. It was my father saying, Dees, you forgot to mention me. So here it is. Here is the article that my father wrote about the book on March 6th of 1982 for the Seattle Post-Intelligencer, where Dad worked for the P.I. He obviously wanted me to bring this back up, otherwise they wouldn't have sent me the signal, and this paper fell from the book as I was standing. So here it is. Thanks again. Come back. I'm going to talk about more of the books that I do have used. The stack is large and ever growing. So stay tuned, come back, and thank you. Thank you again for tuning in. Bye-bye.